Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. This is the Institute of Applied Psychology, and we're running a webinar here on what it is to be a hypnotherapist. So we're making the assumption that if you're here, then you're interested in the possibility of learning hypnotherapy. Either you are an existing therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, or alike, and you'd like to add hypnosis to your therapeutic toolkit, or you're looking for a complete career change. You're looking to get out of corporate, you're looking to come back into the workforce after having children, you're looking to do something different. So those are the two types of people who typically frequent our courses in hypnotherapy. We run other types of courses as well, counselling, NLP and alike. But tonight we'll talk about hypnotherapy. So the first thing is, obviously, who am I? Well, it's important that you know who you're talking to in this field. My name is Gordon Young. I've been in this field full-time since 2003. You can see my credentials there, my memberships, my titles. If this is important to you, then please take note of that. Apart from having led some of the associations, I think probably the most important thing there is the last bullet point. That, to my knowledge, I am the only graduate of the Milton H. Erickson Foundation in Phoenix, Arizona, who teaches at a school, in particular a government accredited school. Why is that important? It's important because this foundation is the birthplace of modern hypnosis. Most hypnotherapy taught in Australia over the years has been traditional hypnosis. Traditional hypnosis tends to focus on Freudian approaches, take you back into your history, take you back into your childhood. It also tends to run script-based responses. So people come in and they say, I'm struggling with cigarettes, and the therapist pulls out whichever stop smoking script they think's relevant, or whichever stop smoking script they happen to like at the time, and they would hypnotize you and read the script to you. That was my first training as well. I found it fairly inadequate, to be fair. And I decided to go overseas and get what I thought was the appropriate training. And the truth is, the Milton Erickson Foundation is not just a pinnacle of hypnosis training in the world. It is actually the pinnacle, I think, of therapeutic training organizations in the world generally. They run the largest conferences in the world, where the best of the best all speak. People like Martin Seligman, Zimbardo, all the big ones, anyone who's ever written a textbook, Albert Ellis, all these guys have been at this little hypnosis school's conferences. So it's a proud lineage for me. You have to have a master's degree to even get into the place, but that's probably the thing that makes me different. In addition, the other thing you see at the bottom of the slide here, 100 leaders. I was included in the 100 leaders program. It was linked to an MBA program here in Australia. And they looked at different professions and decided who they believed was the leader in the field. And we got interviewed about our concepts of leadership and what the purpose was of us operating. You know, what's our larger purpose in being in the field? What do we want for the field? And so that's something you can download as well as an app if you choose. So I suppose my question in my head is, who are you and how are you? Ultimately, you're going to be coming at this from different positions. Some of you know a fair bit about hypnosis. Some of you will just be starting. Obviously, I don't know exactly where you're at. So I'll do what I can to cover off a kind of mid-area of knowledge of hypnosis. So why would you even want to become a hypnotherapist? I actually think that hypnotherapy is one of the best career options you could choose for a whole host of reasons. I'm very pleased I found it. It's very different from what I did prior. But for me, this is something I can do till my old age. And it's a very, very rewarding career. So what's our overview? Tonight, what is hypnotherapy? How can it help you and others? What is world's best practice in the field? Because that's important. What makes the Institute of Applied Psychology distinctive? Because again, that's important. If you're going to make a choice about training, you need to make sure you know who you're training with. And what could a career in hypnotherapy do for you? That's what I'm going to cover off. So what is hypnotherapy? Well, here's the first thing. There are different forms of hypnotherapy. There's, as I said before, traditional hypnotherapy. There's very much more about symptom removal. You're smoking, we read you a script about smoking. One of the downsides to it is that has an inbuilt failure rate because it's a one-size-fits-all type of therapy. When it works, it's magical and everything looks amazing. And when it doesn't, it just doesn't. I've had traditional hypnotherapists say to me that their success rate is close to about 20 or 30%. For me, that is unacceptable. I would not want to be part of this field if my success rate was only 3 out of 10. So traditional hypnotherapy is one option. It's also referred to as directive or authoritarian hypnotherapy because typically you didn't go into finding out what the client wants. You just told them what to do. Now, the trouble with that, of course, is that increasingly people don't want to be told what to do. Even if they know what you're saying is valid, they don't really want to be told what to do. Let me go back. The other form is a modern or permissive or indirective form of hypnotherapy. This is the Ericksonian form. So Milton H. Erickson was a psychiatrist in the States. He came up with a whole new form of hypnotherapy, having been trained as a traditional hypnotherapist. And ultimately, he revolutionized the field. There will be people who would argue that since Freud, there has been no larger influence. All positive psychology, coaching, any modern form of therapy that includes being client-centered, focusing on what the client wants and working with the client very personally, really kind of came out of the Milton Erickson space. Some people say it was others, but Milton Erickson seems to be the guy. And then the third element is like a neo-Ericksonian, which is what we teach. It's Ericksonian in its basis, but it includes all the modern forms of psychotherapy. So solution-oriented, CBT, it's got elements in there. And so this is another advancement on top of what Erickson did. Erickson passed away in the late 80s. So things have moved a lot since then. So those are effectively the three forms. How does work? Well, generally, any kind of hypnosis works on the premise that we have effectively two minds. One is the conscious mind, the logical mind, the voice inside your head assessing what I'm saying right now. And the other one is the unconscious mind, which is all your processing outside of your awareness. You know, how you drive is unconscious. You know, all your body functions, digestion, etc., all unconscious. Your beliefs, your values, your cognition is largely outside of your conscious awareness. So in essence, most talk therapies try to go through the frontal lobe, through the conscious mind, and explain to you that what you're doing doesn't make a lot of sense. But therein lies the problem, because when someone comes to see me, they're split. They have an internal conflict. Part of them says, why, the frontal lobe, that conscious mind says, why are we doing this? I said I wouldn't do this, and here I'm doing it again. And the unconscious mind's running a whole other agenda because it either satisfies a need or an emotion or something else. So ultimately, most problems are really largely unconscious. Yeah. So talking to people through the conscious mind really has a limited effect. Let me just check something in here. Okay, thank you. Someone else is answering those questions. So if you could ask your questions at the end, that would be great. Sorry, I didn't mention that before. So where could hypnotherapy be used? And I'm talking about any type of hypnotherapy here. Really wherever the mind is at play. Whenever the mind has some sort of contribution to the issue, hypnotherapy can be used. And you can see there's a vast array of conditions that hypnotherapy can work with. So again, why hypnotherapy? Well, it's without doubt the fastest way, in my experience, to change an unconscious pattern. And some patterns of behavior and thinking are very resistant to a normal talk therapy. So things like low self-esteem, things like habits, things like fears and anxieties and phobias are hard to out-talk someone. But when you're dealing with the unconscious mind, you can resolve some of these things quite quickly. So without doubt, I mean, and the evidence is starting to pour in about this, hypnosis, when added to virtually any other model of therapy, amplifies the results. Because if you deliver something hypnotically, it just gets in a way that it doesn't in a normal waking state type conversation. So the results are significantly better. I wouldn't want to operate in this field if I didn't have hypnosis, quite frankly. Where's the external evidence, apart from what I'm saying? Well, the British and American medical associations recognised hypnotherapy as far back as the 1950s. In the American Psychological Association, without doubt the most exclusive, most professional body of its type in the world, they have something called Division 30. Division 30 is wholly and completely dedicated to hypnosis and hypnosis research. Places like Berkeley and Harvard and UCLA, Stanford, all have hypnosis labs. It's being studied very thoroughly these days. We all have new forms of brain imaging and alike that can actually help us with this. So what is it really? Well, there's some suggestion that the limbic brain, the reptilian and mammalian brain, effectively make up the unconscious mind. That part of our brain can affect our decision-making, but doesn't have language. Whereas the neocortex, the outer layer of the brain, the most recent development is where language sits and logic sits. So these are effectively the two parts of the brain. With hypnosis, we're bringing them together. We're integrating because we're bringing on board the unconscious mind, which has a different agenda, with the conscious mind. So in many ways, it's about integration. There's always a celebrity factor too. So what kind of celebrities have used hypnosis? Well, these pictured have all used hypnosis for various reasons. Some for giving up smoking, some for other reasons. Princess Kate has used hypnosis for childbirth and for morning sickness. Neuroscience is now really supporting the claims. Hypnotherapy is fast, it's effective. What you can do in half a dozen sessions with someone will typically outstrip what most models can do in 10, 12, 20 plus different sessions, depending on the model. So what could your life look like as a hypnotherapist? Well, it could look like sunshine and rainbows. I'm joking, but in essence, I think it really gives you a lot of freedom. That's really what it gives you. It gives you the choice to run your own practice, to choose your own hours. In essence, it gives you back control. And you get to do something that you love. So who would you be to be a great hypnotherapist? These are the criteria. a level of maturity is important, because a lot of the time, the way you're going to solve problems for people is because you've dealt with that sort of thing in your past. In essence, maturity plus some technique plus some professional understanding of how the mind works, and your willingness to work with people, and the fact that you want to make a difference in people's lives, that would be a motivating point. You want to be results driven for this type of hypnotherapy, because if you just want to be in the conversation, then probably hypnosis is not for you. But if you want to see a result, where people come in and they're tearing up about the problem and they leave smiling or thinking the problem is a little bit silly, then that's what hypnosis is about. That's the kind of speed we're talking about here. Is there a demand? Well, this is an important question. This is a screenshot from Google keywords. And I can only give you a small piece because it's a great long length of keyword, because it's all the different keywords linked to hypnotherapy. But across all of them, there's something in the order of 150,000 searches for hypnosis-related services every month. You can see there, the very top one, hypnotherapists, is 27,000. But then, of course, you've got all the other ones, hypnotherapy for smoking, hypnotherapy quit smoking, hypnotherapy smoking cessation, and so it goes on. This is per month. It's the last column here that you need to look at. This is Australia, the last column. There are only 521 fully registered hypnotherapists in the Australian Hypnotherapy Association. There are some other associations that are smaller, but at the outside, you're looking at less than 1,000 hypnotherapists in the country. Yet there's 150,000 searches for hypnotherapy services each month. So do the math. If you can get good position in Google, if you're good at what you do, you should be able to run a pretty decent practice in hypnotherapy in this country. So why do we need good hypnotherapists? And this is really a need. And these figures concern me, which is why I even brought them up. The first one is that 84% of Australians are disengaged in their job. There's a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of anxiety, and that moves toward depression over time. This one really disturbed me. There is something called a CEDA report, Committee for Economic Development of Australia report, 2015. It said by 2025, 40% of current Australian jobs will be gone to offshoring or to technology. That means something in the order of 5 million jobs will be lost, and they will not be replaced the way previous jobs have been replaced. And they are not working class jobs typically. They're middle class or professional jobs. If you can work remotely, then someone can work remotely from China or India. So there is going to be a lot of flux. There's going to be a lot of people being retrenched, and a lot of people lost, a lot of people struggling. And that hypnotherapy will be a place that they will go to get their confidence back, to be willing to go out for another interview, and so it goes on. Hypnotherapy, good hypnotherapists are going to be needed in this next decade. We have the highest teenage suicide rate in the world. Cyberbullying makes your child much more prone to the risk of suicide. A lot of our therapists have said that even during the training, their ability to communicate and help their teenager through stress and anxiety has almost literally paid for the course just there. So a lot of time they're bringing help back to their own families before they're even going out in the work, out into starting their own practices. So this is going to make you effective in all sorts of places. This is a real concern for me. And the last one is the Australian Psychological Society suggests that 2 out of 5 people will suffer from a mental illness at some point in their life, typically anxiety and depression. So, given that hypnosis has such a high strike rate, people get sick of seeing therapists when there really isn't a lot of outcome. People are looking for an outcome these days. They don't want to spend months seeing a therapist anymore. That's just something from the past. They're just not willing to do it now. So hypnotherapy is a really obvious option for quick results. So could you really be one? Would you want to be one? Well, why? Well, this is why. Absolute independence. No bosses, no timesheets, no deadlines. A good hypnotherapist can earn up to $395 per hour. Some of my students are on that rate. Now, I'm not going to say that's the bulk of them because it isn't. But even on the opening rates, most of my students, or graduates I should say, will start at about $150 an hour. But if you did 20 hours per week at $150 an hour, just 20 hours, 3 days a week, you could be earning $3,000 a week. That gives you also freedom and choice. So you can make sure that you set your appointments up so you can still pick up the kids at 3 o'clock. And the other thing about this is it's light work. So your clientele, unless you're already a psychologist, psychiatrist on there, that these are the people you work with, things like schizophrenia, bipolar, these sorts of things, people with serious mental illness is not your clientele. They're not coming to a hypnotherapist in private practice. It is normal people who've just got stuck. People where their relationship has fallen over. People where there's been a retrenchment. People where they're so sick of their own self-criticism that they want to do something about it. Most of the time, 85% of the time, it's just pure anxiety because that's the plague of our time. Anxiety is actually very easy to deal with for most people. So there's an obvious link. Anxiety and hypnosis makes sense. Sleep issues, it makes sense. That's the type of work you'll be doing. So the good news is you're not in the likelihood, and this is what some people get really scared of, likelihood of serious mental illness walking through your door and you having to deal with that is very low. And the truth is you don't need to do it. You're not even qualified to deal with that. Unless you've got previous qualifications. So what makes us distinctive? This is an important piece. Well, we're the largest school in Australia of government accreditation. There might be people who run the 3-day courses or 4-day courses that don't really let you into the association. They don't give you health fund rebates. There might be someone bigger there, but in the legitimate side of the equation, we are the largest school. We're also considered by many to be the most reputable school in Australia. We have full government accreditation. Now, why is that important? Some people might argue it isn't. Yeah, it is. We recently had a letter from the Australian Hypnotherapy Association. You may know that health funds are being asked to remove some complementary approaches from coverage. Hypnosis is not one of them, but what that letter suggests is that there's a very strong and clear movement towards government accreditation. So the health funds are pushing the government accreditation piece. So it's only going to get stronger. If you go and get trained and get accreditation without government accreditation, then at some point in the future, you may have to retrain in order to get the health fund rebates. So that will mean you have to go back again and maybe come to someone like us. You might ask for recognised prior learning, and we might be able to give some of it to you, but it's actually very hard to do that when you've been trained, say, for instance, traditionally, because that's not remotely what we do. So you could almost have to start from scratch, which would be very disappointing. We'd hate that to be the case for you, but we have heard it a few times now. We're connected to the world's best. Recently, we had Michael Yapko out here for an advanced training. Michael Yapko There's an American psychologist who wrote the definition of hypnosis for the Encyclopedia Britannica. Next year, in February, we've got Dr. Stephen Gilligan coming out. He's one of Milton Erickson's students. He would be considered top 10 in the world in this field. We've had Bill O'Hanlon. He's actually pictured here. He's contributed a 2-day workshop to your course. It's an online component of the course. He came out and trained in 2012 and 13 for this school. And he's left that workshop with us. We use the most advanced methods that are available. Again, they weren't available here. I feel very fortunate that I was able to go overseas and get this. Most people don't have that opportunity because I did spend a couple of years doing this. I thought to myself, if I'm going to come into this field, I'm not going to mess with someone's head if I really don't know what I'm doing. I just don't want to do that. And really what I learned here was just not arming me the way I felt comfortable. So I don't know about you, but for me, my greatest fear was having someone come in the door and me listen to them and think, oh my God, I have no idea what I should do with this person. That would have killed me. So I just made sure I trained until I knew that was never going to happen. And thankfully, so far, it hasn't. We have the most experienced faculty in Australia. I have an international profile. You can look up my name. You'll see me linked to some of the online conferencing, linked back to the Milton Erickson Foundation as well. Bill O'Hanlon, again, top 10 in the world. This is what he said about his time with us. With him, he talked about compassion and integrity. He's also been a guest on Oprah. He's written 36 books on change. We've also had a university professor, philosophy of science professor, who's looked at our methods. And you can see here, he says that we're the cutting edge. He said this strategic psychotherapy approach we're using is potentially the next big development in advancing psychotherapy beyond cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the big boy around town at the moment. CBT is what most of the psychologists are learning, and ACT, which is also getting more acceptance in Australia, acceptance and commitment therapy. But he thinks that what we're doing outstrips all of that. Now, what's he saying with that? Let me explain something as best I can, knowing that you're probably starting pretty fresh. We run something called the Gordian Pillars. It's something that we've created. It's the basis of a book that will be out in the next couple of months. The Gordian Pillars is where we break down things like anxiety into its component parts. So we tackle the componentry of anxiety. We don't do things like calm blue ocean. We don't do guided visualizations. We want to tackle anxiety by pulling it apart and basically knocking over each pillar of anxiety. So we know if you're highly anxious, then you must run excessive rumination. You must spend too much time in your head. That's the only way you can do it. So we have to bring that excessive rumination down. And one way we do that is to help you understand how much thinking is too much. The reason why we tend to think too much is we don't know when enough is enough. We tend to overthink because we're hoping at some point that's going to protect us, or we're going to find a solution. But most of the time, what we're really doing is just worrying and chewing on the same information over and over again and looping around in circles. So one distinction I'm going to give a client is that useful analysis leads you to an action or a conclusion. Useless over-analysis tends to loop you back into the problem. Clients struggle because they don't have a distinction. They don't understand how to get out of their own head. Our problems are caused by our cognitive distortions we're running. That really means the perception we're running of the situation. A lot of time we can't change the situation, but we can change the way we view it. Another aspect of anxiety is that we have something called a low tolerance for uncertainty. In essence, when you're fearful, when you're anxious, you're not scared about what has happened or what is happening. You're worried about what will happen. You're worried about consequence, and you tend to catastrophize into the future. What really scares us is uncertainty. Because if I don't know what's going to happen, I can make things up. I can fill that gap with my greatest fears. So anxiety is actually never about the external world. It's always about what I imagine is going to happen. Now, the next question, obviously, is, well, how realistic is my concern? Is it a high probability that that's going to happen? Or is it actually fairly low? Now, for most people, the things they stress about, they probably got about a 2% success rate as far as what they worried about and what actually has actually happened. Most of the time, 98+% of the time, what you worried about just does not happen. That means you have a very poor risk assessment. That means the way you imagine things needs a reality check. So what we're going to do hypnotically is give you that reality check to get you to assess how realistic is your concern. Because if I can give you a better risk assessment so that you don't tend to catastrophize, you tend to look at what could go wrong, and that's useful, and then set up a contingency for it, then ultimately you're not going to worry about things in the same way. This is why I don't do calm blue ocean. We're not about just relaxing people. Relaxation's fine, but it isn't going to change your anxiety levels. You might as well prescribe a warm bath with lavender. At the end of the day, you have to change the way someone thinks to give them a real inoculation from anxiety. And they're just two of several components that create anxiety. This is your certificate. If you are successful, if you decide to come with us, and the truth is, as long as you do everything you need to do, the likelihood is that you will be successful. No one ever fails unless they just don't do the assessments. That's the only way you can really fail. We give you 3 shots at everything before you have to do any other variants. And so assuming that you've got some background, you've got an understanding, you've got some maturity, this really shouldn't be a problem. You have 40 weeks to complete all the assessments. And a lot of it is just 20-word responses. There's no essays to write. Well, it's not a university degree. It's more about competency. What's more important to me is there's a couple of video assessments, and you videotape yourself doing sessions with someone. To me, that's the most important ones, because that shows me that you've got it down pat, that you know what you're doing. Yeah. Now, a lot of the course is very practical, right? So there's a lot of opportunity to practice the technique and practice your interventions in the course. And that's important because you get to work with a whole host of different people, you get decent feedback, and really, at the end of the day, this is a practical skill. There's not masses of theory in this. This is practical, and it's really simple in many ways. The whole benefit of the strategic approach is it's simple. We're not looking at creating all sorts of meaning. It's just, what are they doing? What are they missing? What do they need? Really, that's it. How are they doing what they're doing, and what do they need to change that? So examples of people who come through our courses. Dr. Anna Cohen runs a very successful business, mostly dealing with kids. Andrew Sparks, he is actually now in the States. He really brought the whole hypnosis piece into elite athletes. Canberra Hypnotherapy Clinic, these two graduated in 2012. Their reputation is such that they have people flying in from as far away as Melbourne and Adelaide to see them. Mike Conway is an adjunct professor from the Macquarie Graduate School of Management. He's also the Sydney FC mind coach, or now the Socceroos mind coach as well. He talked about being world-class and that it changed the way he viewed training and communicating. One thing we've evolved over time is a marketing arm. So we can produce your website for you if you choose. We can set you up with some SEO. We can get you started in essence. We only started doing this very recently because we found that although people could do the hypnosis work, the thing that they found most challenging was setting up a business. So we've answered that call. Ultimately, if you go off and do whatever you want to do, but if you want to come back and do this with us, we'll get you started. We'll put you together a website. We'll get you some search engine optimization so you can start to move up the ranks. We'll set you up with Google ads. We'll get you going. This Louise Jang is one of our first websites that we produced. If you want to look at that online, please feel free. What's your return on investment here? Well, if you think about it, in less than 20 clients, you could actually recover your entire investment. Assuming you just see someone 4 times at $150 an hour, that's $600 per client. 20 clients is $12,000. You've covered off your investment, well and truly. So I don't know another career that would let you do that. I've had some graduates do 20 clients in a month, but I'm going to say if you count it 2 to 3 months, just be safe. Never want to promise anything when I can't deliver it. I just don't know. But it really depends on how you set yourself up and how much you want to work. But 2 to 3 months, you should be able to do that. That would be bare minimum. And you could literally be in the black in a couple of months. Additionally, assuming you don't miss a payment, you could be a clinical hypnotherapist and still be paying for the course. So you'd be actually earning whilst you're still finishing off payment. We even now have a 4-year payment plan. Now, that means that you get 4 years. You could be earning for basically 3.5 years whilst paying off the payment plan. It costs a little bit more than if you just pay up front. Yes, of course. There is some interest attached to it, which doesn't go to us. It goes to the finance company. But in essence, you're borrowing from them and taking them 4 years to pay back. But it makes it very affordable. You don't have to put money down up front. It gives you enormous choice that just wasn't available in the marketplace a while ago. You'd have to talk to Brigida about that. You'd have to call us about that one. But in essence, we can work out something that's going to work for you, assuming you have a decent credit rating. The other thing that we've got set up now is an online directory site. So one of the first things you can do when you first set up, and you haven't even got a website or anything else yet, is you can set yourself up on our directory site. This is another way we're looking to help you guys get out there. Because as I said, that's been the biggest concern, is set up the business part rather than the actual hypnosis part. So we're adjusting the course and we're adjusting what we're doing to support you guys in that, because it's really important that you get out there. It's important not just for you, but I think it's important that this form of hypnosis, which is so much more advanced than the other models that are basically being taught out there, more advanced than what I was taught when I was first here in Australia, it is important that this gets out there, because if you get good at this, there's no reason why you can't expect probably about a 90% success rate on a presenting issue, where you can pretty well guarantee if your client does everything they're meant to do, they did everything you asked of them, they showed up for every session, they should have an outcome. You know, I was in clinic yesterday, and a woman who was quite seriously depressed came back for the second session. She said, nothing's really changed. And I thought, that can't be right. Something's not right with that. So I asked her, did you do your homework? And the answer was no. Did you listen to the recordings I gave you? No. My response was, well, what were you hoping? You know, what are you expecting? You know, what she wanted was magic bullet, where I just hypnotize her and she comes out completely changed. She doesn't have to do anything doesn't have to, you know, listen to it again and support herself. Some people need to listen to a recording many times, 3 or 4 times before they're going to really get it. And she would have been one of those people. And she wasn't doing it. And I basically told her she needed to go away and consider what she was doing. Anyway, we've had 2 more sessions since then. And yesterday she came back and she reported that she's completely different. She cannot believe it. It's just amazing. And she's been in and out of therapy for years. She can't quite believe it. It's just too good to be true. So, but she's done her homework now. She knows what her pattern is now. I got her to read a book about it. You know, she's now educated about her own mind and how that works. And so this model actually is very reliable, which is what I love about it. The results are predictable. The only thing that gets in the way is the client doesn't do what they're meant to do, or the client doesn't tell you something significant, and so you're going down the wrong pathway. That's pretty well, as long as you get good at this, as long as you've really followed a process, then you've got to get an outcome. So for me, I wouldn't want to be involved in any other model. I've seen lots of them. I've pursued lots of them, but I keep coming back to this one. So as I said before, one of the big new pluses is this 4-year payment plan. So feel free to ask us about that. So in summary, what are we talking about here? You can have a really decent earning capacity and have freedom and time in a way that most people on the planet don't. Most people have to do, you know, the 8 till 6. Doesn't matter whether they've got kids at home or anything else. They have to be somewhere. Tomorrow, I will be at my little girl's Easter parade. Why? Because in the middle of the day. Why will I be there? Because I can be. I can organise that. It's important to her, so I will be there. There will not be many fathers there, but I get to do those sorts of things. It doesn't mean to say I don't work at other times, but I can make choices. The other thing is you really get to make a difference in people's lives, and this is something that I feel very proud of. You know, I've run other businesses where, you know, something like 400 people earned their entire income out of my enterprise. So that made me feel good about what I was doing, but it's not the same as this. When you help someone, you affect their entire family, you affect everyone around them. You make a difference in a lot of people's lives. You'll also start to become known as someone who's quite wise. I have to say that I was not known for my wisdom going back to who I was prior to my hypnosis and NLP training. Now people seek me out. You'll develop an expertise that is actually fairly rare, an understanding of how the mind works that makes you effective in a lot of different places, not just in therapy. And if you do the government accreditation piece, you get to future-proof your career. You know, there's no end to when you can do this. As long as you can stay awake, you can literally do this. It's not physical. Ultimately, you can earn a decent income and just do a few hours a day. This is all possible. So may I suggest you talk to us? Really, that's what we're here to do. Now, if you have questions, please talk about the study time. Okay, so the course is 16 days of face-to-face across a 4-month period. We've estimated that if you allocate it between 2 and 5 hours a week, you should be able to do this course. Everything depends. It's very hard. It's a piece of string. You know, whether we've had some people who don't know how to use Word, and so they've got to learn even things like basic processing software. They're going to take a little bit longer. But if you've got a bit of nous about you, you're technically savvy, then a few hours a week should do it. It's not a massive effort. You do have a number of assessments because it is government accredited, but at the same time, they're not that taxing. Really, it's only about, did you understand those basic concepts? As I said, 20 words, 50 words, that's the bulk of it. The vast majority, it's only a few lines. Okay, so weekend course. Let me actually go to that. Because I think we do run a 2-day weekend certificate of hypnosis. What's this about? I think it's a useful idea if you're not sure about whether you want to do this, to have a taster, to learn the basics of hypnosis and find out whether you want to do it or not. By the end of this 2 days, you'll be able to hypnotize someone without a script and bring them back. Now, are you certified to deal with patients after 2 days? Absolutely not. It would be ludicrous to think that a weekend training would allow you to mess with someone's head. I know other people promise it, but if you try and get certified or try and get insurance for that, you'll find you won't get it. It is designed as a way of looking at whether you really want to do this or not. Because you might try and go, I really don't like this. You might. It's not what most people experience, but you might. And effectively, it's the first couple of days of the course. So you could just get a taste of it. And if you decide to then sign up to the diploma within a certain time frame, then we take the cost of this course, which is under $500, back off the diploma. So I don't know if that helps, but that's, it's a way of finding out not just, whether you like it or not, but also whether you're okay and whether you like our teaching style. That's another thing. We see a lot of people, we hear a lot of people on the phone saying they've spent enormous amounts of money, realize they're not really effective, and now they're looking to be retrained. And it's just heartbreaking for some of these people that they've gone down the wrong path. Well, this way you get a chance to try it out, find out what we're like. And I think that's a really useful thing to do. So I highly recommend this. We've got it both in Melbourne and we've got it in Sydney. Some people fly down. There's a limit to how many cities we can do this in. But ultimately, it's a great way for you to have a little test. Now, let me just see the rest of these. There is no clinic practice component. As I said, we videotape you, so it's not like counselling, where you have to go off and do a placement. This one doesn't do that because you don't go into institutions. You will go into private practice as a hypnotherapist. In the States, you can go into pain clinics and other places. That's not really not there yet with this. So you have, let me read the whole question here. You have a diploma of counselling. Okay. Well, I'm pleased this has been helpful. A diploma of counselling will really obviously set you up in that you already know how to sit with someone and find out what's going on for them. All that's going to be helpful. You'll find that when someone really wants to get an outcome quickly, you could then plug in the hypnosis. We have had counsellors who come through the course who have had clients for years that they don't want to do hypnosis. but they brought on board in the counselling the strategic approach, and they said that they're getting better outcomes, even though the client really doesn't want to try the hypnosis piece. So even if you don't add in the hypnosis piece, you can plug in some of the new psychotherapy components if you've already got that background. We're not doing any sessions in Canberra. Apologies, you'd have to come up. But you've got people in Canberra, talk to people like Stella and Spiro at the Canberra Hypnotherapy Clinic and ask them if they think it's worth the trip. They came up for all the training, all the NLP, all the hypnosis, and now they're running the careers that they wanted to run. So it may just be worth a trip up the highway. Is it possible for a full-time student to join the diploma? Yes, it is. We have had people before who are doing psychology and may not be feeling like they're getting the practical piece out of it. Come and do the training. As I said, it's not that taxing. It's not like a university degree. It's mostly competency-based. So there are assessments to do, but they're relatively easy. Does the course address trauma? And is there such a thing as trauma-informed hypnotherapy? Not quite sure what you mean by that. It's not a phrase I've heard. Hypnotherapy is wonderful for trauma. The only thing I'd say is the level of trauma you deal with should really be determined by your experience in the field. You don't want to be dealing with war veterans on your first sessions. But yes, I wouldn't be without the hypnosis and the NLP components, to be honest, if I had, whilst I'm working with trauma. Certainly I've worked with a number of people with trauma. Okay. Have I answered all those? What's the name of the practice in Canberra? I believe, if you look at, they're number one in Google. So clinic, I think it's Canberra Hypnotherapy Clinic. Stella and Spiro. Let me type that in. Husband and wife team who do the work. Another one is a psychologist who runs a hypnotherapy clinic. And you could talk to her too in Canberra. She's been with us for probably 7 years now. She's still in supervision with us. She's been doing this for a while. And she actually switched from being a psychologist and only doing a bit of hypnosis on the side to pretty well doing hypnosis all the time now. So she's shifted her practice altogether. Yeah, and if you want to get some sessions to find out what type of hypnotherapy you're doing, you would do here, yeah, go to see any of those people I just mentioned if you're in Canberra, and you'll get a pretty decent understanding of this type of hypnosis. Okay, have I answered everything? Apologies, this is rolling upwards. Looks like, okay, there is a program for existing hypnotherapists. That means you only have to technically do the first half of the course, which is 6 to 8 days, depending on your background. If you're a psychologist, a counsellor alike, you may not want to do the strategic psychotherapy component, which is the second half of the course. Here's my experience. A lot of therapists will actually just book in the first section, and then when they've heard me talk about how I deal with things, they typically will come back and do the second half because it is quite different. They also understand how you've probably done so much psychotherapy, you think, I should be across all this. And ultimately, the news is that virtually no one's across strategic psychotherapy like this, not in Australia. So if you're trained overseas, there'd be a chance, but if you're trained here, probably not. I have heard that Swinburne in Melbourne is starting to do a little bit of this, but still not quite what we're doing. Are there prerequisites for diploma level career change? Yeah, you can't be 18, so we don't take 18-year-olds. You have to have, I think, 5 years of work experience, or you are engaged in training, so you're a psych student or something like that, then we would take you. Again, it's maturity. Ultimately, we want people who've lived a bit of a life and understand the types of issues. I mean, if you're in corporate management, the great thing is half your clientele will be that. And you can bring that background to the equation. You know what it's like to be in an organization with all the politics and all the other crap that goes on. So when you can show that you've got that background, for a lot of people, that's gold. You know what's going on for them. So your background will be part of what makes you unique and makes you different even from me. And there'll be people that will be better off seeing you than me because you know that system. You know it well. So whatever you've got will probably be useful. If you're a parent, that's going to give you a whole bunch of understandings that other people don't have. So whatever your life experience, you can bring that to the table. Okay, so I think that covers things off. It is almost 9 o'clock now, so I do want to cut it off. But hopefully this has been useful. You can see here, there is a phone number you can ring, the 1300 number. If you're looking to do this, please talk to us. The concern we have is that if you don't, you may end up being one of those people that talks to us after you've trained somewhere else and you're looking to retrain. That's not an uncommon problem we hear. And it's disheartening to know that people go training places, they're not getting the outcomes. But understand something, hypnotherapy is not a regulated field. So there's a very creative range of options and skills, and anyone pretty much, unfortunately, can set up a hypnosis school. There is no criteria for that. But look for government accreditation at the bare minimum, and look for something that's modern and not script-based at the bare minimum, because you want a high success rate. A qualification will not create you a career. What creates a career is that you're good and you get referrals. The people send other people to you. That's what gets you a busy practice, is that people know that you're worth that money. If you're just going to read a script to someone, quite frankly, they can download something off the net. They don't need to spend $200-300 with you. They can download something for $15 or $20. It's not any more personalized to them than your session will be. So unfortunately, those people are going to be replaced. That's what I see. And the professionalism isn't there. When people can hear that you're reading something, they don't see you as a professional. So explore this further. I'm going to say, if you can do these weekends, please do it. That will give you a really clear understanding. I can't really cover it off in a webinar because it's practical. You need to see it. So thank you for your attention. I will close off now. Hopefully we will speak to you. If you're interested in this, by all means, let us know. You can book online or you can call the office, and let's get you into a new career that is going to give you something that is rewarding and long-lasting and supportive, and will actually help you transform people's lives, but also your own. So thank you all. Let me close this off. And hopefully we'll speak to you soon.